2016 History Fair for St. Lucie Public Schools. This year we have over 180 projects represented in different categories, from exhibits to research papers to websites, documentaries, performances. We have students representing all of our schools from grades 6 through 12. This showing this year is the best showing we've had in years. We've got students who are working on the theme of exploration, exchange, and encounter. So as they dive into history, they're talking about the different ways that they've seen exploration throughout. So you'll see things like Ponce de Leon. You'll see the exchange, where you're seeing people talk about how they've influenced society through their work, and then they go through and talk about the encounters that they've had throughout that time. Thank you.
My name's Andrew Chung. I go to the Somerset College Preparatory Academy. I'm in 10th grade, and this year I did my history fair topic on island hopping, which is a World War II strategy used by Douglas MacArthur and Admiral Charles Nimitz. Sure. Island hopping was used to counteract the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. They attacked their islands to get to the mainland Japan to prepare for a final invasion. But when they got there, they calculated casualties, and they were catastrophic. They could be up to 4 million casualties on the Americans. And back then, they didn't know about the atomic bombs. So they were really worried about what they would do then. They didn't bring out the atomic bombs till late in 1945. And that's how the Americans won the war. And a huge portion of it accredited to island hopping. They also had to take the atomic bombs to one of the islands so they could fly over to Hiroshima and Nagasaki to drop the bombs.
Okay, my name is Simeon Rodriguez. I'm from Fort Pierce Central, and my project is the Transcontinental Railroad fulfilling manifest destiny. I picked this topic because I thought it could clearly represent the themes of this year's history fair: exploration, exchange, and encounter. And all these aspects are represented in my project in a very visual and stylish way. As you see, I use lots of pictures from a historical website, and also I made a model train that clearly represents the train of the area. And also I have a map in which I kind of blew up, and which I also here you see is the route that the Transcontinental Railroad made. The red represents the Central Pacific, and the green represents the Union Pacific. And the black is the pre-existing railroad route, and which expanded throughout the East, South, and Midwest. And each of these circles represents a quote that relates to the project. And here you see these are the work crews who worked on the railroad. Here you see Chinese immigrants, Irish immigrants, freed African American slaves, and Civil War veterans from both sides of the war. I did my best to explain my information as best as I could.
There's something about the sea that lures people out to it. Like a siren's call, we find ourselves on it, in it, adventuring to places, meeting people, and finding riches unlike anything the common man could ever dream of. Countless stories have been written about the mysterious fathoms below. A sailor's odyssey, and always my favorite, a dashing swashbucklers who loot for glory and gold, and sometimes get the girl. Though, my absolute favorites are about the girls themselves. The European elite know me as Mark Reed, a former English soldier and belonging to the crew of Calico Jack Rackham and Anne Bonny. But, really, it's no fun if I'm just a ship hand telling a tale. At least let me be a captain, something interesting. So I'll let you in on a little secret, one that only Jack, Anne, a few special someones, and my dear Mum know. So if you slip up, just know you'll end up with Davy Jones. That's a promise. Mary Reed, infamous for my battle skill, famous for being one of only 2 women to be convicted of piracy during the Golden Age of it all, the other being my dearest Annie. Now, you may have never heard of me, but heard of the likes of Blackbeard, Henry Morgan, or one particular, Mr. Sparrow. And that's fine. You've heard of me now, and it would do well not to forget me or what I have to say. You think you know pirates, but you don't. Not like me. I was there. I was one. For as long as there has been something of value, there have been thieves. And for as long as there have been sailors, there have been pirates. Now, you might think it's good being unable to exist without evil, but my people aren't like that. Dangerous, a little chaotic, a little bit more prone to, well, murder, but not evil. We just keep the government from feeling too powerful. If the rich steal from the poor, who gets to steal from the rich? Now, pirates don't start out with this mad urge to loot and plunder, take your money and kiss your woman. No, no. Many started out like me, looking for a life beyond land, beyond the stifling protocols of the European continent. I spent most of my life disguised as a boy, to receive money from my brother's grandmother. My mother was the widow of a sea captain, and my brother Mark was legitimate. I, on the other hand, was not. My family needed the money from my father's fortune, and it was only going to my brother. And when he died, talk about a pirate at heart. I stole his name and his gender to continue receiving money. And not just from her. No, no. I went out into the world to work among men, eventually joining the British military. I was a fierce fighter, and I would have risen in the ranks, except I made a mistake. I fell in love with a Flemish soldier. We lived a wonderful life together, and we opened up an inn in the Netherlands. And it went well, until he died. A woman without a husband is worthless, but a man without a wife is free to live on his own terms. So it's back to being Mark for me, and without a war to advance my ranks, I set out for the West Indies and the Caribbean. But enough about me for now. My story has led us to the heart of it all, one of the main hubs of piracy in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. While piracy existed around the world, at this time it was centered in the Caribbean, West Africa, and the Indian Ocean, with the Caribbean being most active. And as piracy is vast in its claims, the Golden Age spanned 3 centuries, with 4 key eras in it. The privateering era of the 16th century, the buccaneering era of the 17th century, the pirate round of the late 17th and 18th centuries, and finally, the infamous post-Spanish succession period of the 18th century, during which piracy reached its peak and resulted in many of the famous pirates we know today, like me. Now, our Golden Age coincided with the ages of exploration and colonialism, and our trade absolutely affected it, as theirs helped nurture ours. The triangular trade routes between the American colonies, Europe, West Africa, and the Caribbean were loaded with valuable trade goods, weapons, food, and clothing. Of course, slaves were shipped across the Atlantic as well, but we'll get back to that later. In any case, if it was on the ocean, it was fair game for taking. And not just for pirates, but for the growing European empires as well. I started out as a privateer, a pirate for hire. The English, as well as the French, Dutch, Spanish, and Portuguese, needed someone to do their dirty work. And with a letter of marque, we could do it legally, an exchange of power, as it was. We could do dangerous and terrible things, as long as the king pardons and protects us. We would give him and our country riches for freedom. During this time, the European empires were truly exploring and discovering the New World, sending governors out to these colonies to run them in their stead. But the kings of our empires couldn't hold on to us forever. Whether you believe it or not, we had a chance at creating a republic for pirates, a democratic country that followed the same pirate code we all vigilantly followed. We almost had it. Our way of life in proposed nation was similar to that of the socialist Scandinavian countries you know now. As long as we stayed out of the royals' hair, we would have been fine. But where's the fun in that? We began pirating a most valued commodity, free labor. Slave ships were ransacked, and we invited more than a few to join our crews. That was a step too far, and that's when the government decided that pirates were more than just a threat, but a serious problem. And problems need to be eradicated. They began waging an all-out war on us to quell our rebellion. Because the government won, We've been painted as the scum of the seas, people who deserved our unfortunate ends. And when our homes became our graves, it was only fair. Your George Washington is a hero. But why? Because he won. Success is the only difference between a rebellion and a revolution. Pirates, though, never give up. Not once. Even at my very end, I refused. On November 15th, 1720, Captain Jonathan Barnett took our crew by surprise while they were still recovering from the effects of a rum party they had hosted. Barnett's crew disabled our ship, and while those yellow bellies fled to the hold, Anne, another crewman, and I fought off the boarding party. 3 against at least 20. Anne had no mercy, and neither did I. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, as they say. I shot into the hold in my anger and killed a crew member and wounded another, and did the same to Barnett's crew for good measure. But that wasn't enough. Our crew and captain were arrested and tried in Spanish Town, Jamaica, where we were all guilty of piracy, surprise, surprise, and sentenced to hang. Poor Jack, headed for the noose. Anne and I weren't. You see, we were both quick with child. They would never hang a mother-to-be, would they? If anything was criminal, it would be that. So they delayed the execution. Unfortunately, I never made it out of prison. Anne escaped and was never heard from again, so the legends say. I died of a violent fever on the 28th of April, 1721, still carrying my baby. They say dead men tell no tales, but they never said anything about dead women, did they? My death was a marker of decline. Piracy was no longer on the level it had been at before. Royal navies became stronger and trade slowed down. There were more men to take down pirates and not enough pirates to support each other. There was no more Spanish treasure to seek. So the momentum was lost. By the end of the 1720s, the Golden Age had all but died. The spirit and the legends live on, though. Countless stories have followed our travels and exploits, romanticized our lives, made us so much more in death than we could have ever dreamed of being in life. The Golden Age pushed the boundaries of law and order, explored new territories, exchanged ideas of a freer world, encountered challenges unlike anything we've ever seen, and dared to be bolder than ever before. Our swashbuckling spirit is present in every renegade, every rebel, every dissenter and fighter and runaway, and in everyone who did what they believed was right, even if they were doing it alone. So drink up, me hearties, and a toast to the Golden Age and its golden legacy. My name is Jacqueline Pond, and I'm from St. Lucie West K-8 School.
All right, Jacqueline, obviously you enjoyed this topic very much. What made you decide to do this particular project?
What made me decide to do this particular project is that I really like parts of history that are dominated by someone or something other than the typical white male. So especially like Nat Turner's Rebellion, where it was a big part of history for someone that wasn't white, and he may have been male, but he took a strong lead for the African Americans at that time. But me being a woman and me also very interested in the feminist culture, I thought that this was very interesting because it was a female dominant time for them, and the pirates on their ship didn't really care if they were a woman. They cared if they were a good fighter and they were able to do what they would do. They didn't underestimate them.
So the Pirates of the Caribbean actually kind of glamorized the position of women back then, and she would have been more like the pirates that were actually on the ship, more so than the feminine side. Is that correct?
Yes, she was. Well, there were 2 pirates. There was Anne Bonny and Mary Read that were females, and the thing that made me choose Mary Read is she had already spent her whole life disguised as a boy to receive money, and so she had already taken in that masculine facade and had already made herself into something else. She had made herself into a different gender, and so she didn't act like a princess. She didn't act like the governor's daughter. She was just like any other pirate, and she was very masculine in her way she acted. So they definitely took on a different character, but for Mary Read, it became just her regular self. It didn't become like a second character. It became her.
You said that she took on the gender and identity of her father.
Her brother.
Oh, of her brother. So tell me a little bit more about that, and what do you think that was like?
Well, her father's fortune, well, her father was not actually who her parents called her father. That was not her actual father, but it was her brother's father. And so her brother died, but her family still needed the money because they had no one else to give it or bring it to them. So she took on this act and said, well, hey, if you need the money, I wouldn't mind going out, finding us some money, and also continuing to receive that money from my brother's grandmother. And so her mother said, yes, that's fine. We really need it. And so she kept doing that, and then when she realized that there were more opportunities in life as a male, she decided that after she left her mother's house, that she was just going to continue this because she needed money and she needed to go out into the world as something she enjoyed and as something that she didn't want to just be a housewife. She was a very strong, independent woman who wanted to go out there and do something with her life. So her being disguised as a boy really helped her and made her stronger.
Very good. Well, thanks so much. You did a fabulous job, as always, and really enjoyed that, Verity.
Yeah.
We're from Alapata Flats School, and our project is on the Battle of the Bulge. And I chose this project because of my grandfather really liked building models, and he showed me a diorama of what he did, and I really wanted to copy what he did. So that's why I chose to do this project.
The reason why this is so amusing to us is because we've always been into the wars and why they started and all. And one of the reasons why this is called the Battle of the Bulge is because on the map, if you ever look it up, it looks like a big old bulge of two things colliding together.
What we have here is a skirmish of the Battle of Stabilo. And the Battle of Stabilo was two Shermans versus a tiger and a tiger royal. And of course, the Germans won this battle, but the Americans won the all-out battle. If not, I'd be speaking German right now. So,
Well, we sort of, when we were watching the videos and all on this, we saw how there was like buildings getting wrecked and stuff. So that's the reason why we built the models of the buildings. And these are just like bushes that the tanks are coming, the German tanks are coming out of, like kind of like, coming out of like because they were in war. And then we used these, well, I already said, and all these buildings are just the models of why they're just destruction.
this project took us a very long time to build, mostly because of these two. These two were the hardest to build. But after we glued everything down, we decided to, because this battle was based in the winter, so we decided to paint white all over to make it look like snow. And then we spray painted some of the tanks to look more like an actual tank.
Hi, my name is Renzo. I'm from Westbrook High School and JROTC. I'm happy to be here on the National History Day. This is my project about the 19th Amendment, how women getting the right to vote. And it becomes like a political organization for agitation, protest. How they getting the right to vote by political organization, and they are getting the right to vote. And now we can see the change, and today, like, women can vote, can play sport, the same as a man.
Okay, I'm Karina Tabar.
And I'm Casey Regano.
And we go to Somerset College Preparatory Academy, and we did our project on Mount Everest. In 1921, George Mallory was the first to attempt the summit. He attempted it 3 times, and he was unsuccessful each time because he climbed the north side of the summit. Yeah, the north side of the summit, and in reality, he should have been climbing the south side. So in 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay attempted the south side of the summit, making them the first two people to reach the top of Mount Everest.
And after Edmund Hillary climbed the mountain and he encountered the Sherpa people, who his partner Tenzing Norgay also reached the top with him, he started something called the Himalayan Trust Foundation. And the Himalayan Trust Foundation built schools, trained teachers, hospitals, nurses, and provided cleaner resources. And so this has really helped to benefit the lives of the Nepalese, and their population has grown, the infant mortality rates are lower, and they're overall a healthier society because of Edmund Hillary.
So we did Castillo De San Marcos, and we chose it because in our U.S. history class we started watching Channel 1 News, and we saw the topic on the fort, and we found it very, very interesting, and so we decided to do that.
It's the oldest fortification in the United States, and it's in St. Augustine, Florida, so we thought it would be cool if we learned more about it since it's here in Florida.
And it's gone through like numerous encounters and exchanges because it was exchanged through America, Britain, and Spain, and the names changed constantly, and now it is protected under the National Park Services, and it's a national monument now.
So this year's topic for History Fair was exploration, exchange, and encounter. So we as the researchers, we decided we wanted to explore a topic that was of international significance. So we wanted to understand how the exchange of three religions and the encounter of their followers led to years of conflict in the Middle East. And we've each prepared an interpretation of our research, starting with my friend Aaron.
The Crusaders were a series of campaigns that launched when the Byzantine Empire Alexis asked Pope Urban II for help confronting the Turks. This what caused the Turks, or the Christians, to eliminate all infidels, Jews and Muslims alike. This also led to the Pope saying, "On this account, I, or rather the Lord, beseech you as Christ heralds to punish this everywhere and to persuade all people of whatever rank, foot soldiers and knights, poor and rich, to carry aid promptly to those Christians and destroy that vil race from the lands of our friends." The Kingdom of Jerusalem was not very wealthy. Oftentimes, Christians traded with Muslims and paid taxes.
Now we have our friend Casimir. He's going to talk to us about Judaism and how that impacted the Middle Eastern region.
So Judaism's most significant impact on the Middle East was influencing the creation of the state of Israel. Now, Jews claim Israel as their homeland, and this can be found in Exodus 6 verse 8, which it says, "I will bring you to the land which I have sworn to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you for possession, for I am the Lord." Now, this all began because of a political movement called Zionism. Now, Zionism is where the Jews began to colonize the land of Israel. And when they colonized the land of Israel, it caused many conflicts. And this conflict started between the Palestinians and the Jews because the Palestinians had already inhabited the land of Israel, and the Jews came and took over. And so this led to conflicts such as the Six-Day War and many conflicts we see today in Israel and Iran. And economically, they impact the world by that Israel has many of holy places that belong to each religion. And when these people come and visit these lands, they mostly pay to stay in hotels and eat food and those kind of things, which influences the land of Israel. And then we're going to go on to Nigel.
Okay, thank you. So we all know from what we can see on the media and around the world today that Islam perhaps has had the most significant impact on the Middle East. One thing that Islam did is created two political sects that were the Shiite Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. The Sunni Muslims believed in Abu Bakr, who was the Prophet's right-hand man who was always with the Prophet. They said Abu Bakr should be the Prophet's successor, while the Shiites believed Ali, which was the Prophet's son-in-law and cousin, was supposed to be his successor, and he was supposed to handle the affairs of the everyday in the empire. One of the economic impacts that Islam had on the region is that it requires all Muslims at least once in their life to make a pilgrimage to Mecca. And when you go to Mecca, you have to spend your money, your time. You spend a lot of resources there because Mecca was a large trading center, and a lot of the world has 1.2 billion Muslims, so they all at least once in their life have to go to Mecca. And another law of Islam said that the Muslim empire was allowed to collect what is called a jizya, which states that if we take you over, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a Christian, you don't have to become a Muslim, but you have two options. You can pay this tax and you can continue your religious beliefs, or you can die. So that was one way that Islam created a lot of revenue here in the Middle East. And we have a scripture here from the Quran, chapter 9, verse 29, which says, "Fight until they give the jizya willingly while they are humbled," and that's from the Quran, giving instructions on how to collect the jizya. And another political impact that Islam has had in the region is it has influenced governments themselves. We can see a quote here by Saudi Arabia's king, or former king, King Fahd. It said, "In dealing with various matters and practices, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia adheres to well-known and violent principles from which it has never swerved and will never swerve, God willing. The position it takes, whether they have to do with foreign relations or any other matter, are built on rules and principles of religion." It's referring to Islam. And in its Saudi Arabia's constitution, it talks about Islam and how Islam is supposed to run in the country and how the laws are based off of Islam. No matter what type of relations that Saudi Arabia has with its people and its other nations, it always comes back to Islam. And we could see that as well in the preamble of the Iranian constitution, when Iran calls itself an Iranian Islamic Republic, rather. So as you can see, we each put our own interpretation of religion, and we wanted to see that how these religions have turned these holy and sacred grounds into a battleground.
My name is Olivia Wright, and this is my brother Kyle Wright. Our topic is Apollo 11.
Our topic is important because it signifies how advanced in science and technology the United States had become.
During our research, we found out that America and Russia were in a space race. Russia had sent a man to space, but not long after, America successfully sent Alvin Shepard into space.
On July 19th, 1969, the United States sent Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, and Neil Armstrong into space.
It took them 4 days. After they came back to Earth, they landed in Hawaii. They successfully completed President Kennedy's goal. Their goal was to send a man into space to land on the moon and to bring him back home successfully before the decade was over.
We have a picture. It's Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. Neil Armstrong's famous quote was, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
We did our project on the encounter of death in different religions, and we did Christianity, Islam, Satanism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, and we basically researched what they believed during the process of death and what happened after, whether you reincarnated or you went to heaven or hell. And we found out that most of the Christians, they believe that you went to heaven or hell, and the Satanists, they believe that when you died, your soul disappeared, and they believe that during life you should live your life to the fullest because they frown upon the belief of heaven or hell because they think that it's a reward, or reincarnation is a reward.
We did this project because we wanted something that incorporated both of our religions and beliefs, and I think this project really combines both of us together.
This year's topic for History Fair was exchange, encounter, and exploration. Our project ties into that because the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Olmec encountered the cocoa bean, exchanged it, and explored for it. The story of chocolate begins with the cocoa trees that grew in the tropical forests of Central and South America for many, many years.
We chose this topic because we love chocolate, and so it's amazing how far it's come from 900 DC and how many obstacles it became over liquid substances, and in the 1850s it was added sugar to make such a sweetness flavor to it, and now it's become to the Hershey's. All right, go.
The cocoa beans were used as currency, and only the rich Mayans had it because it was like a status symbol. So if you had 10 cocoa beans, you could buy a rabbit, and if you had 100 cocoa beans, you could buy a slave. So it was basically a status symbol for the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Olmecs.
Okay. Cocoa beans were also used in religious ceremonies such as weddings and everything, and they were only afforded by the rich people, and which was like it represented to them like if they were like very important people, and it was very important to the gods because they worshipped it and like thought it was something really important to it, and it so yeah.
For many years, the Mayans thought that the cocoa beans brought good luck, and they thought that it had spiritual qualities. So let's say they would give, we read this thing online, it said that if they would give cocoa beans to the king for his daughter's hand. So if they wanted like to marry the king's daughter, they would give him the cocoa beans in exchange for the daughter's hand. Okay, that's it. They're gonna have to cut it out.
My topic was on the Tainos. What I covered over is their beliefs, their culture, their heritage in general, what they ate, and their significance in history. For example, when they were encountered with Columbus, I think around 1492, I put in the topic, I put information about what happened, how they were abused, how they were used for money, how they were put into labor, and how they died because of it. So over here I put their appearances, and I put also what their houses look like. Over here I put information on what the inside of their house would have, like banana leaves mats, Taino couches and chairs. Over here I put their agriculture. What they did, they made moats on the ground, and then they planted seeds. And this is how they ate. They put fish on a rack over a fire. Over here is their exchange with Columbus, how they greeted each other, and what led to their tragic extinction. And that's all I really covered in the encounter of the Taino.
I wanted to do my history fair project on Harriet Tubman because I wanted to do a topic on a strong woman lead. Harriet Tubman saved over 300 people to go to freedom states. She did this by going on the Underground Railroad and using the North Star. Her name was Moses because of how she led people to freedom. She went to Philadelphia, New York, and Canada mostly. Huh? The Underground Railroad was neither underground nor a railroad. It was just a pathway to go to other states from where it was.
My topic is the role of women during World War II. I did this topic because I want to show what women have done and that they have power during
jobs done by men, and they did an awesome job during World War II. Um, they were pilots and they work in the Air Force and workforce.
So I did my project on the deep sea exploration. It was based on two dives from the 60s and 2012 from the Mariana Trench, the deepest part on Earth, which is over 35,000 feet deep. The first dive included Jacques Picard and Don Walsh, and they were actually the only ones to go like ever, the first ones, and that was in 1960 exactly, and then 2012 was the second time in history, but this time was only one person, and it was James Cameron. They actually spent a couple of years planning on this dive, and the technology took a couple of years to make. They actually invented technology to actually go under and go through all the PSI and the pressure underwater, or else they wouldn't be able to do it at all. Two watches were made to go underwater, two Rolex watches, and the pressure on the watch was equivalent to 10 SUVs actually stacked on top of the watch, but it didn't crack at all. The watch for the 1960s was actually called the Deep Sea Special to rename the series of the watch instead of just calling it a regular Rolex. In 2012 dive, they called it the Deep Sea Challenge, and they spent 5 days, only 5 days working on that watch. That watch was actually strapped onto the submarine and went all the way down to the bottom of the ocean and came back up and still worked perfectly fine. They had to create new technology such as 3D cameras, and they made robotic arms to go on to the submarine so they can carry back samples to bring back. And they found 68 new species to be exact. And they even went to Indonesia, in China, which where the Mariana Trench is, in the Philippine Sea. And there's actually a few other trenches that are 4 miles deep, but this is known to be the largest one. And this is actually a topic that I chose because I wanted to do something different. Instead of an actual person, I wanted to do something like more with the environment, so I can get a new feel on like everything that's going on around us. Because more people went on the moon than to the bottom of the ocean, and it's here on our own planet. And I thought that was interesting. And here's a chart right here that shows different heights of the highest places on Earth. And right here is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and that's in 830 meters. And here's a whale at almost 3,000 meters in the Titanic. And here's the Matterhorn Alps peak. And right here is the Mount Everest, which is at 8,000 meters. And a commercial airline will go all the way to 10,000 meters. But the Mariana Trench is above it all, as you can see. And that's and Centennial High School. Joshua Minnis from St. Lucie West Centennial High School.
I'm Lindsay Doss from St. Andrews Episcopal Academy, and I did my project on Walt Disney and all of the problems that he encountered while building his theme parks. Some of the major problems that he had were budgeting issues and copywriting on the names that he was choosing. When he was building his park in Orlando, MGM Studios, which is now Hollywood Studios, he had to change the name because MGM Studios was the name of the company he was working for at the time, and the lease that he had made with the company had expired, so he had to rename it. In the process of building Animal Kingdom, which was originally supposed to be Wild Kingdom, but once again for copyright issues he wasn't able to use the name. But when he was building Animal Kingdom, he had budgeting issues and he had to cut out a lot of his ideas for the park. When he was buying the land in Orlando, Florida, he had to buy it underneath his brother's company because if he bought it under the name Disney Studios, they would bring the price up a lot more. So he had to buy it under his brother's company to keep the cost down. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Sophia Tovar. And my name is Shannon MacGregor. And we're from Palm Point Educational Research School at Tradition. And this is our project. The title is Mandela and King, The Fight to Freedom. And in this chart, we compared and contrasted them. Over here on these two sides, we have Nelson Mandela, who is from South Africa, and Martin Luther King, who is from America, and how they both had the same fight to freedom in both of their countries. Yep. And this is the I Have a Dream model. So this is Martin Luther King on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and he's giving his I Have a Dream speech to the crowd. And these cherry blossoms, they represent Washington, D.C. And then this is the Washington Monument. And then if you look, then there's the reflecting pool. This is where we made our picture wheel. It shows the different pictures and different very important moments in Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela's life. This is when Martin Luther King won his Nobel Peace Prize. This picture shows when Nelson Mandela was inaugurated to be South Africa's president. This picture shows Martin Luther King in the Birmingham jail, where he wrote his very famous letter in the Birmingham jail. And this picture shows Nelson Mandela and Queen Elizabeth. And they were at a parade celebrating Nelson Mandela's achievements and accomplishments. And here we have Nelson Mandela in front of the South African flag and like his date of birth, when he died. And then we have the same thing for Martin Luther King over here, where he was in front of America's flag and when he was born, when he died, and when he gave his I Have a Dream speech. On top here, this center earth, we have Martin Luther King and we have Nelson Mandela's achievements. This is his people rooting for him and when he got out of jail. And the second picture is his degree for the Doctor of Laws from Northeastern University. And then these thought bubbles explain peace, humanity, equality, and freedom. And each picture shows equality, humanity, and peace or freedom. This is our little Who Said It chart. Each one has a little quote from either Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King. Inside, this quote is, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. This quote represents that after one challenge in a person's life, there's going to be many more challenges after, so you just have to have perseverance and keep going. And so this is our analysis, and we interviewed fellow classmates, and the question was, how did Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King impact the way our generation lives today? And they said that they paved the road to freedom and peace, and they taught kids to be brave and stand up for what they believe in.